Welcome to Wrestling Travel's Lockdown Sessions, presented to you as always from our boys over in New York City and girl, Chrissy Love. I don't forget about you, but True Heel Heat Wrestling Podcast, and they're not just a podcast; they're doing everything over there, and they're doing it right. They're not just a bunch of smarky guys and gals talking. These guys know their stuff. In fact, I got a lot of information from them just today. So if you listen to one brand new wrestling podcast this week, make it True Heel Heat. If you got time for two, check out Wrestling Travel. We've been trying our hand. We're on episode 7 of our podcast, and we got a lot of work to do, but we're slowly getting there. But speaking of getting there, our special guest today, Mr. Ryan Justice out of Texas. Welcome to the show, Ryan.
Hey, how's it going? Thanks for having me on. I'm excited to do this.
It's going well. I'm up here in the great state of Wisconsin, where I imagine it's not as hot as it is down there, but it's hot enough for the big guy up here. So,
oh man, I hate summer. I'm a fall, winter guy. October's my favorite month. It's just my birthday month, nice and cool. Football season's in full swing, so that's my favorite. I mean, we had a span of heat waves here a couple weeks ago where it didn't get below 105 for like 8 days straight.
Batman's misery right there.
Oh man, it was probably 8 of the most miserable days I've ever had. I'm a cold weather guy.
You gotta make your way up here for a show then one of these days. Let me ask you this now. It's called the Lockdown Sessions because they originally started this to find out what people have been up to in a lockdown. But when you say Texas, I think high school football. Is that all still a go as of right now, as of our recording?
A lot of it's up in the air, you know. I haven't really kept up much with the high school stuff just because I do a football show, so it's all NFL, and keeping up with 32 teams at that level is enough. But I've heard a little bit of it. I think they're really just depending on the school districts, and they're really just kind of leaving it up to them whether or not they want to do it or not. I grew up in Midland, which is, I mean, that is the Friday Night Lights country. I mean, you think of the movie Friday Night Lights and Midland Lee and Permian. I graduated from Lee, so I know all about that. And I don't know if they're going to cancel it or if they're going to play without fans. I would think more than likely with high school, it's a little bit easier to cancel than like college or the NFL. But I haven't really heard much on what they're doing with high school football this year.
I don't know what we are going to do up here in Wisconsin without football. But I can't imagine Texas, where, like I said, synonymous with high school football. Those games are bigger and more important to people, like you say, in Midland than NFL and college on some levels. So I can't imagine what will happen.
I've gone to the Lee Permian games both in Midland and Odessa, and I don't think I've seen this at any other high school game I've been to, but in the end zones they have to put up a chain link fence on the berms behind the end zones, and they're patrolled by like off-duty cops and stuff to keep the sites separated, both at the Lee Permian game and at the Midland High Lee game. Because man, you'll hear a car speeding by my house. Those games get intense, man. There's depending on who wins and where it's at, there's fights in the parking lot afterwards, almost guaranteed.
We're talking thousands of people at these games, right?
Yeah, at the Midland Stadium, the new one that they built, not Midland Memorial, they built this one in 2002. I want to say it's 30,000 people that are there, and Lee Permian usually fills it up. Same with Lee Midland High. I mean, it's packed, man, and they don't hold back.
That's insanity. You need to get a Permian and a Lee wrestling league going on and try to draw half of that.
I'll
Once we get
I'll
back.
never support. I'll never back anything with the words mojo on it. I won't do that. um, I'm not a Permian Panther guy.
All right, so for all of our friends in the UK, we're talking American football, but let's get on to the language that everybody that's watching this understands. Let's talk about professional wrestling. Ryan, how long have you been in the business?
I will have been in the business 11 years, almost 11 and a half. I started in May 9th of 2009.
And when you started, buddy?
Yeah.
Oh,
my first match was against Justin Taylor. Little old high school gym in Lockney, Texas, in a low boy ring that didn't have much padding on it.
That's all. Now, did you before that, were you on the trampoline league like Justin was telling us?
Yeah, we actually ran it together. I like how he left out some of those key details, but we ran it together. Well, it had happened with me and probably my childhood friend. His name was Justin Smith. We used to run a little something like it on our block, and it was just kids being kids or whatever. But I mean, we would get every kid on the block in one of our backyards, and we would put together a little show. And eventually his dad got rid of his trampoline back there. So, about a year and a half go by, and I meet Justin at a local movie theater that we worked at together. He actually hired me for my very first job. And we would just, that was kind of what started the friendship, I guess. In the beginning, it was our love of wrestling, and we would just spend entire shifts talking wrestling. And eventually, he would talk about how they would used to be on the trampoline, and we would, he would say something about how he actually tried to plan something out at a local high school. And we just kind of started talking. We really got the idea when promoting. I want to say it was 300, the movie 300, when it came out. The GM of the movie theater actually got the bright idea to bring in a LARP group, and so what happened was, we just kind of talked. We were both kind of open books. We'd almost talk to anybody at that time. And we talked to the LARP group, and they're like, yeah, we just meet up at a park and just do it, and nobody bothers us. And we were like,
I'm going to just interrupt you just for everybody, because I wouldn't have known this up until a couple of years ago, but LARP stands for live action role play. And these guys make weapons supposedly safe. But I drove by a park and actually turned around, and they were beating the hell out of each other with like styrofoam swords and everything. So just wanted to jump in there.
They get into it, man. And so Jackson and I kind of looked at each other, and we were like, what if somebody did a wrestling, like a little wrestling show on a trampoline in a park? Like, I don't think we need a permit as long as we're not selling alcohol or making any money. So we got a group of guys together, and we found this park, and we all pitched in and bought a trampoline. And it was, me, him, the guy that I started it with. It was one of my childhood best friends, and a group of other people. And we just started holding these little shows, and we would actually film them. Like, we would film them and do me and Justin. Here's one of the key details he left out. Me and Justin would switch between wrestling and doing the commentary. And so we would be like, it was crazy when we had to wrestle each other because someone else had to hop in and do the commentary. But it was, we just kind of wore a lot of hats with that. And we would spend entire shifts talking about writing the different shows and coming up with the different finishes. We each had replica belts. So, like, I'm sure like every backyard promotion had. And we would get weapons. We've gone out there and visited the park that we wrestled at a ton of time. And it's funny, Justin was known for doing this spot off the actual official park sign that stood maybe 8 or 9 feet off the ground. And he would always have somebody go run his head into that sign because he could take a pretty good looking bump on it. And we've gone out there a couple of times, and the sign is still leaning from when and there's still dents in the sign from where we ran his head into that sign. But yeah, we wrote storylines. We booked finishes. We helped people with characters. We developed characters. We came up with some pretty interesting finishes. Like we had a strap match at one point, and one of the guys hit basically was a Cobra Clutch suplex with his finish. And the other guy he was connected to wrapped in the middle of the suplex, wrapped the strap around the guy's neck, and then fell out of the ring unconscious. The guy that had the strap wrapped around his neck passed out and lost the match. So he retained his title while unconscious. So we had it was one of the we would book little finishes like that. And
Wait, that was all on purpose?
That was all on purpose, yeah.
Oh,
he didn't really choke him out. It was a work.
Yeah. Okay.
But he in the middle of the suplex, they practiced it a little bit, and he was able to wrap the strap that we had around the guy's neck, and just by falling out of the ring and pinning the guy to the mat, he choked him out and won the match by submission. It was funny because on the video that we had, he woke up and he goes, "I don't even have to be conscious to win the match. That's how good of a champion I am." And we would do things like that. Like one of the things, and it was funny because I think about it now, and for so long it just felt taboo to talk about. You know, when we got in, we made it a kind of an agreement that if anyone asked, we weren't really going to deny it, but we weren't actively going to be like, "Hey, you know, this is where we came from." When really I look back at it now, you know, that was back in 2008. I look back at it maybe, you know, 12 years later, and I go, you know, we wouldn't be where we are today without that. And that was a pretty pivotal point in our story. So I'm thankful for it. Again, we wouldn't have gotten none of this would have happened if we weren't doing if we hadn't have set up a little show in a park.
You know, and we're used to, now I'm much older than you, we're kind of used to putting our nose down at like the backyard type thing. But so many people have that similar story, but they go on like you guys did to Top of Texas, NWA Top of Texas, I believe is what Jason said. But you guys went on to develop your craft and further it. It's not like you continue to do stuff. And mainly it's from a safety standpoint, and dare I say the words, a kayfabe standpoint of that. But so many people get their start that way and develop the love and look what you did. You guys did in 2008, writing shows, develop character development, a lot of stuff. Now, you might not have been doing everything quote unquote correctly, but you're developing a passion for the entire business. Look at like I think CM Punk. If you watch his story, they were out drawing some indie promotions with the stuff that they were doing. So yeah, it's nothing to be ashamed of.
Yeah, it's funny because we would get crowds. We would get people in the neighborhood that we were wrestling in. They knew that Thursday night, these guys are out there wrestling. These guys are out there putting on this wrestling show. And we would get crowds. The biggest one we ever had to have been at least 100 people. And it stemmed from, we really got a boost because this park was also used for soccer practices. And one day we get out there and it's packed. There's just people everywhere. And we're like, okay, well, we're going to set up where we usually set up. And we did. And all of a sudden, all these people who were taking pictures with the soccer teams started migrating over to where we were. And by that time, they would get done with their pictures or their practice or whatever, and they would come watch us. And at one point, we had about 100 people out there for the show, just packed. I mean, it was everywhere. And we had about 100 people out there watching the show, and probably about half of them came back the next week. And it was funny because when that started happening, we started getting the cops called on us.
Oh, no.
Yeah. And we got here. Funny story. I'm telling you, Jason's going to see this, and I'm going to get a voice message probably not too long after this airs. We get the cops called on us mid-show. Jason's mid-promo, and he sees the cops, and he starts cutting a promo on the cops. And I'm sitting there going, no, don't do that. No, don't. And he's sitting there trash talking the cops. And all of a sudden we're like, no, And every time, I think we had him called on us maybe 3 or 4 times. Every time it was, are you guys making money? No. Is anyone out here drinking? Or are you guys selling alcohol? No. All right, you guys have a good night. Don't hurt each other. That was the extent of that. And again, I look back at it, and I look back at just our story over the last 12 years. And it's sometimes I get nostalgic, and I wish, for one night we could go back to that, just because it was a simpler time.
No.
But trade what I'm doing right now for the world.
Right. That's all part of your story. Please tell me somewhere somebody's got it on an old VHS or whatever it is of Justin Taylor cutting a promo on the police. Does that exist?
I think we had actually run out of battery on that show, but I don't put it out there for the public. I actually have it as an unlisted link on our YouTube because all the footage, a lot of the footage got destroyed when the original laptop that I had crashed. And so I would manage to save one match that was me and Justin, and it was probably one of the better angles that we had run. But I've got it unlisted, and I recently got it back up on YouTube, and Justin and I got together and watched it, and we were like, it wasn't as bad as we thought it was, going to be. And it gave us a little chance to go back and remember.
When you guys have the best of Ryan, Justin Taylor DVD, perhaps that can be the Easter egg. You guys doing commentary over that early match. That would be cool. Well, let's move on, because you guys end up actually now when you go to NWA Top of Texas, and you guys start, if I'm correct, if I remember right from Justin, you guys start training there. Is that difficult to unlearn or relearn what you've been doing?
No, we went in. We kind of went in with a blank slate. We didn't. We didn't want to bring anything from the backyard over, because we didn't want to be portrayed as those guys. We didn't want that stigma on us, because we knew it could hurt us in the end. So we unlearned kind of everything that we were taught. I think the only thing we knew how to do coming into our training was lock up. That was it. That was pretty much the only thing we knew how to do. Everything else we were like, okay, blank slate, let's go in, let's do exactly what we're told to do. Let's make sure that whatever stigma we have on us for backyard wrestling is completely erased, because we don't want to be those guys. We don't want to be known as the backyarders trying to be wrestlers.
That's interesting. I trained with a pretty prominent trainer subsequently, which I always try to get that word in if I can. Subsequently, went on to some other places where I actually had guys while we were in practice lock up with me right-handed. And I was like, well, what the heck are we doing? And then I'd find out there's so many of these self-taught or people that have maybe made, and that's probably where some of the bad name comes from. My reputation is I'm a backyard wrestler, and now somehow they're getting booked on the same type of shows, these outlaw shows where you got people that are trained and people that are not. I went on a long tangent a month or so ago with the speaking out movement that was unfortunate but needed to happen in our business, about people that when I trained, it was $5,000 to go to a prominent school, and you couldn't find a school. We didn't have things like these. I've trained so long ago that we didn't even have history class. Everything was in black and white. That was supposed to get a laugh. Hopefully people are laughing off screen. But I always say, now we got people that go, hey, I've been in the business. Joe Blow taught me how to do it. I can bring you in the business and charge you $500. And now we've got a whole generations of people that, they're tucking the head under the right arm for a suplex and doing just different little things that don't have the quite psychology thing. So it's refreshing to know that people like you and Justin and a lot more people go, hey, I enjoyed doing the backyard stuff, but I went in blank slate to learn it right. And that's why I was curious if it was tough to unlearn and relearn. But I'm sure some things were with muscle memory, but no question here. I'm just rambling aimlessly like the great reporter that I am. But that's kind of my opinion, and that's why I say it's great that you and Justin both, hey, this is where I came from. But guess what? It's part of my history. It's part of who I am. And I'm not a glorified backyard wrestler. I'm a guy who started out backyard and then went to prominent training and started working. How long before you started training, before you had your first match in a ring?
Let's see. So we started training in March of 2009. And our first match was May. But I want to say it was because out of the guy, and no, this is no disrespect to the guys that we brought in, but out of the guys that we had brought in, we were the standouts, and then we were one of the three standouts. It was us, and then our buddy Jeb, who wrestles under the name Wildcard. We were the three standouts. Justin was kind of the natural athlete. I was the guy that kind of had the personality and the showman, and then Jeb was the daredevil. So we all kind of stood out because I guess we had the most athletic background of everyone that was there. But yeah, 2 months, and our first match. I used to have it. It was on the laptop that got destroyed with all the backyard stuff. I used to have it, but I don't know if I could go back and watch it now.
Well, a lot of my stuff is gone because it was before cell phones, and I would wrestle for a different company and just ask for the VHS copy as payment and never get it. And I think about that, and I wish I had them, but I'm like you. I'm like, man, let's just pretend that I was really good.
I've got the first I think I've got up to 2014 of my matches at Top of Texas. And then so I've been uploading kind of some of my favorite ones to YouTube. And I'm also recording now. I make sure I go to Full Sail University for sportscasting. So they sent me a nice camera and a nice setup, and I've got the mic, I've got the tripod and everything. So I make sure I take that with me, so that way I can get good, clean, crystal clear footage, not just so I can put it on something like YouTube and promote it, but for my match study as well. So that way I can watch tape, I can go back and say, hey, okay, this is where I can improve. This is what I can do to get better. I'll just kind of go back and pick it apart and use that to improve. So that, to me, getting my match footage is insanely important to me.
And that's one of the best pieces of advice I could give to anybody, is recording those matches. And like you said, not just to have my highlight reel, but go back and watch them, and especially the ones where you know before you put that tape in or press play, you know this was a shitty match and you know you messed up. But watch it so you can go, okay, hey, this is 100% why this happened, and here's what I would do, and ask yourself those questions because you never stop learning in this business, do you?
No, no, I think that's a rule for life is you never stop learning. The moment you think you know everything is the moment you fail. And I've witnessed people, not just in wrestling, but come in and just be full of themselves, just be like, hey, I've done this when I was working, just in a shoot job, a sales job. When I was working at this place, I set all these records and stuff, and then they come in and they're afraid to talk to people, and you're like, okay, I know your game. So yeah, don't never stop learning, even on the bad ones. Even if it's going to put you in a bad mood for the rest of the day, you got to watch the bad ones.
100%. What would you say now? 11 years. Can you give me what would be the best piece of advice that you received from anybody in the business, or a piece of advice that stands out?
Probably one of the things that I learned is there is such a thing as staying at a place too long. Yeah, it's good to have regular bookings. It's good to have a place that you work at recurringly, but eventually you stop. If you work the same people over and over and over again, you fall into a comfort zone and you become content with what you're doing. And so my piece of advice is never be content. Never let yourself get into that comfort zone. If you want to go work somewhere else, make the effort to go work somewhere else. If you want to, be the local legend, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But just know that there's better opportunities out there. If you want to make it, if you want to get to the highest level you can, you've got to take advantage of those opportunities. Another piece of advice, and this is for any person out there that has a family, that's got kids. If you are in that situation, you need support and you need balance. You need to surround yourself with people that are going to support you, that are going to do the things that help you out. But you also have to be able to balance life and wrestling. You've got, don't take the booking that's going to cost you a week's worth of groceries for your kids unless you're going to be able to afford it. That's, I think that's one of the reasons why I haven't, done the whole, be on ROH or go out and work like just a ton of big shows. I've worked some pretty big ones, but not a whole lot of like what we're seeing with the Expo, just because I have a family and I have to pick and choose which bookings I want to take. I don't want to drive, 8-9 hours to get paid $25. I got to at least have something to come back and show for it. After all, this is a business. And a lot of times that word gets thrown around. A lot of times people say, oh, you're disrespecting the business. It's not good for business, when they're using that word to mean something else. And business means you are doing whatever you have to do to make money for yourself and to help the place that hires you make money. If you are not doing that, you are not running a business. You are being a fan.
I agree. A lot of, I've been doing this for a long time, and hey, how come you've been doing this for so long and we've never, well, here's the thing. I couldn't make it on $50 a weekend. So then you take the job that's in front of you, and then pretty soon you're away from the business for a little while and you come back. But I've always had the passion, but that's it too. And always, I never believed any hype that I had. I'm signing autographs on a poster and I'm accidentally signing my shoot name, which is Justin Clapper and not the name. And then I'm thinking, when people are talking to me, we just maybe had 200 people in a dance hall, and they come up and talk to me, and I'm yo, you're great, this and that. And I delivered pizzas, man. I was taking classes and delivering pizzas. So I just never, you want to, as much as you do, you want to believe your own hype and go on, because that's just human nature. Like but I just never did, because basically I was just kind of like, you had to take steps and get confidence.
In that same sense, don't be afraid to take in a moment. Don't be afraid to let yourself sit back and go, wow, that was pretty darn cool. If you've come through the curtain and you've got 1,200 people through it that you just set on fire, don't be afraid to appreciate those moments. Don't be afraid to appreciate those big moments. If you just won a big match, or if you just had a really good match, somebody went out there and helped you really get over, don't be afraid to appreciate those moments. You're not, I don't think you're a mark if you sit back and go, wow, that was really cool. Don't be afraid to do that.
Right. And that went well. That, one of the best compliments I ever got was first time ever being a heel and a couple of really old dudes. Pats on the back. I thought that was cool. But you always live, and it's not just me. I've talked to plenty of people, but the kids that come to the show, when you're able to get that wide-eyed look from a kid looking up at you, and you're just a pizza delivery guy at heart at that point, but you're doing whatever you can, shaking hands, making the kids' night. I've seen people recently deny a kid an autograph because they wanted $5-10, and I'm like, I don't even know who you are, son, and you just denied some kid. Come on, you ain't that big time. That's my pet peeve with some of the stuff in wrestling today, at least on the indie scene.
Yeah, I would never do that, dude. Like, no, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't charge for pictures. I'm not going to charge you to sign your little pamphlet. No, dude, I'm there. You paid your money to get in and see me and give me that, therapy that I get in the ring performing in front of a crowd. I'll take pictures with your kids. I'll sign your book. Now, if you're buying some of my merch, yeah, obviously.
Yeah, you're not going to throw away. You're not going to give away a T-shirt or merch and stuff that you paid on. But I've seen, it's just my pet peeve, and I just walk away now because I'm the old man. But it's just unfortunate. But let's talk about not walking away from something. Let's talk about walking toward something. Let's talk about walking toward the Independent Wrestling Expo in Dallas, Texas. Now, there's a bunch of questions I missed in between there because I got to go back to them, but we're here. Friday, August 28th, you, along with Justin Taylor, you're in a battle royal. All right, It's not just any battle royal. The winner of that battle royal goes on to main event the next night. Get this, NWA heavyweight champion Nick Aldis and Jeff freaking Cobb. You, my friend, during this pandemic, have an opportunity in just a shade over a week, if the cards play out right and you win that battle royal on Friday night, you have a shot at the NWA World Heavyweight Championship. What does that feel like?
It's amazing. I've been on shows that have had the NWA World Champion before. And here's the crazy thing. I've been on shows with the NWA World Champion that have had big names on it, one or two big names on it. And what's crazy about that is anytime that happens just in a normal situation, everyone ups their game. Everyone on that card steps up. Everyone in that building just kind of steps up their level of intensity. And I can only imagine what it's going to be like in a battle royal. I'm the guy that's not afraid to do whatever I have to win. If I have to hang out behind a freaking turnbuckle until there's like 3 or 4 people in the ring, I'm willing to do that. I don't care what you think of me. I don't care what you say about me afterwards. Hey, you know what? They're not the guys walking away with the title shot. I'm not afraid to do that. I'm not afraid to do what I have to win because, you know what? That's the name of the game, is winning. And it's a battle royal. No one's really counting any rules anyway. So, yeah, it's a huge ring is going to be 10 just because of how big this weekend is in general. So, yeah, battle royals are just craziness in themselves. And now you add these kind of stakes to it. It's just going to make it that much more intense. And I'm gonna be there as well. But again, I'm not afraid to do what I have to win.
Now, we're going to assume that you win this battle royal, you've got the shot in a 3-way. I mean, and I'm not going to take anything away from Jeff freaking Cobb and Nick Aldis in a 3-way. But you have to, prior to that title shot that you potentially would have, you've got Justin Taylor.
Yep.
Night 2, am I right?
Day 2 during the halftime heat. So
okay, so what's on your mind then if you've got this title shot coming up later on at night and you've got Justin Taylor? That's a lot of strain on you mentally.
That's the cherry on top. You know, you've been in the business. I've had to work 5 times in a weekend before. Barely able to walk to the ring. You know, it's not anything I'm used to. Now, granted, this would be a different scenario because it would be 3 of the biggest matches of my career in a weekend. So that's where you kind of have the reality set in. But Justin Taylor and I have wrestled all over West Texas. We know each other like the back of our hand. I know how to beat him. I know how to get under his skin. I know how to get in his head. I know how to make him make the mistakes he doesn't think he's going to make. You know, he gets in there and he's all Mr. Motivation and he's all Mr. Positivity. And if you've watched the video package that I put out, I know it's a fake. I know it's a fraud. I know who Justin Taylor really is. I've fought him for 11 years. And, you know, that's a match that, when I beat him is going to be the cherry on top of the best weekend I've ever had in the business. And then to walk away with the NWA World Championship, again, I'm 5'10", 205. And so I'm not as big as Cobb or Nick Aldis. So again, it's a chess match. I got to be the guy playing chess when everyone else is playing checkers. And, you know, I know how to do it. I've done it before. And I know that Justin Taylor, that's going to be a heck of a match. That's going to be a match that'll probably take a lot out of me. So it means if I win that battle royal, I've got to work, I've got to play it smart in that triple threat.
Absolutely. Now let me throw this scenario at you, and I don't want to upset you, but let's say you do not win that battle royal, but Justin Taylor wins that battle royal. Now what happens to that match? With your history, are you going to beat the snot out of Justin Taylor, or would you go a little bit easy knowing, hey, I'm going to help him maybe with his shot at the NWA title?
I don't see a scenario why I would do that, why I would help Justin Taylor at all. I've already helped him enough in our career. No, I'll call it right now. I am beating Justin Taylor with a move that I have been working on during this pandemic. A little, shout out to Jerry Lynn. I'm beating his ass with the Gotch style pile driver. And I'm going to do it, and I'm going to do it until he's not moving. So maybe what they'll do if he wins this battle royal and he can't move, the guy that beat him gets to get in the triple threat. I'm all for that. I will make my own opportunities. I've done it my entire career. And I will make sure that Justin Taylor, if he wins that battle royal, it would make that weekend that much sweeter if I were to take that away from him.
Impressive. Do you think it's wise to call your shots here a week ahead of time?
Look, I've called my shots my entire career. I've won every championship in Amarillo. Last year at Squared Circle Pro in Lubbock, Texas, my shoulder was pretty much hanging off of my arm. And I became the only guy to win the Squared Circle Pro Championship and the Human Chess Tournament in the same night. And I beat Justin to do it. I've had 2 match of the years in the span of 8 months. And I told everybody that it was going to happen. Everybody up here in Amarillo this weekend in 2015 told me I couldn't win the Top of Texas Championship. Guess what? I made them choke on their words. I have called my shot and then shoved it down people's throats my entire career. It is the most satisfying thing I've ever done. So this weekend, I'll be able to do that to a ton of people after I leave Justin Taylor laying in the middle of that ring.
You guys heard it here first. So, I mean, we've got to get our tickets to be in Dallas. And if not, I know this is going to be live stream and the platform is going to be named later on. So people pay attention to Twitter and the Independent Wrestling Expo. I believe we got a scoop right there with the finishing move. So this is going to go viral.
I'll put it this way. I hope it does. I'll put it this way, and I'll give you another viral clip. Look, West Texas has a long and deep wrestling history, and guess where most people think that ends? With Terry Funk. Most people think West Texas wrestling died with Terry Funk. Well, guess what? I'm going to be the guy that resurrects it. I'm going to be the guy who makes West Texas wrestling a place to be again. And in fact, when it's all said and done, I will be the last Maverick of West Texas wrestling.
They were pretty strong words considering I think Terry Funk might still be able to, he might be quote unquote retired, son, but I would never call Terry Funk retired.
Hey, I've seen Terry. I would very much confirm that he's retired.
Hope Terry's got YouTube because this will be awesome. All right, I want to step away because I don't want to make you too mad. I want to rewind. I want to back it up a little bit. Texas wrestling, Von Erichs.
Yeah.
How much Von Erichs did you watch growing up, or going back? I know growing up might be a little different, but going back and watching tapes and everything. How important are the Von Erichs to you?
So as a kid, I didn't watch much WWE, but when I did, one of the guys that stood out to me was Kerry Von Erich. I used to have an old Coliseum video that had a match of his with Ric Flair in Barcelona. And it was one of the matches that stood out to me as a kid. So I begged my grandmother to give me a Texas Tornado figure, and I have it, and I think I still have it. And so, yeah, Kerry Von Erich was probably my first taste of the Von Erichs. But everywhere I go, I know the history. I've seen people go out to where the Sportatorium used to stand. And, it's one of those things where you can't appreciate Texas wrestling history without acknowledging the Von Erichs. And of course, Kevin and his sons are continuing that. They wrestle here in Texas sporadically. I've seen them pop up at VIP a couple of times, and they are every bit as they do everything they can to carry on that Von Erich name. I'd love to step in the ring with them at some point. Another, their feuds with the Freebirds and everything they did in World Class still echoes in wrestling today.
I was going to say, just everybody I talked to about the Von Erichs, and I've been talking to a lot of Texas people lately, is and I haven't turned the WWE Network on for a while, but you could go back, I think starting in 1982, World Class is on there, and they have not lost their shine. Those shows, the storylines and everything, fantastic. So you might have just touched on it, but when you're a young Ryan Justice, who kind of catches your eye on wrestling? Is the Texas Tornado the first guy you watch, or who do you see on wrestling that you're like, man, I want to be like that guy?
So initially, I wasn't a WWE kid growing up. I liked it. I would watch it occasionally, but I wasn't a big WWE kid, and especially because I grew up in the Attitude Era, so my parents wouldn't let me watch it, or my grandparents wouldn't let me watch it. I don't know, I would have been 8 or 9 at the time. So I was a big WCW kid, and I kind of break it up into phases of guys that I remember watching and had the influence on me. Early on, it was Sting and it was Diamond Dallas Page. I always loved the Define the Authority characters, and of course, as a kid, I was caught up in Goldberg, but he wasn't like my favorite. That was always Sting and DDP. But as I grew older, and especially as I started, you know, getting into the business and learning, the two guys that I feel like are the biggest influences on me, and just kind of going back and uh, reminiscing a little bit, I was always sucked into Eddie Guerrero's and Chris Jericho's matches. They always gave me the biggest reactions outside of Sting and DDP. I was, and now that I think about it, you know, I think about how they drew me in. And I was like, man, darn it, you know, technically they were my favorite wrestlers, because two of my favorite wrestlers, because they got the biggest reactions out of me.
I always go back when I ask people this question. And I'll remember I'm much older than you. AWA guy growing up here in the Midwest, but I go back and think when I was a kid, before he was Mr. Perfect, Kurt Hennig in the AWA turned on my favorite wrestler, Greg Gagne. And
Yeah.
I can remember as a kid how much I freaking hated that guy. I hated him. And it would suck because the girls at school that would even watch wrestling, he was cute. And I was like, how the frick can you like this guy? Because he turned on Greg Gagne. He's a bad guy. He took a roll of dimes from Larry Zbyszko, and that's how he knocked out Nick Bockwinkel. And I was so upset. And then you get older and you get in this business, and I look back and go, dude, he set the hook and he had
Yep.
me reeled in. And a guy who does that most recently, The Miz. His craft is good. You know, the way he talks, and he rubs a lot of people the wrong way, but he's doing his job and he's doing it well.
I've gotten comparisons to The Miz. I've gotten comparisons to Jericho, especially because I look at myself and I look at Jericho, and I go back to the storyline when he was going into WrestleMania. When he first got into the business, he did a lot of emulating of Shawn Michaels. I kind of see the similarities between me and Jericho in that regard, especially because for a long time I used the Codebreaker as a finish. Um, yeah, and I just saw as a kid, man, I was hooked into Jericho's matches and Eddie Guerrero's matches, mainly because I wanted to see him lose. But I looked at him, and I was like, man, you know, these are great. They're entertaining. Another guy that I got into was Booker T. And I would always watch Booker's matches and be like, you know, just hanging on the edge of my seat for him. I wasn't playing. I would have toys right in front of me, and I'd be just captivated by his matches. Him, Eddie, Jericho, and DDP. You know, Sting, and of course Sting. I was always just reeled in by their matches. I remember my father, who was the guy that got me into wrestling. He was an NWO guy. You know, he was probably my age at the time, and he was an NWO guy, and the weeks leading up into Starrcade '97, we were going back and forth at each other, just even over Christmas. Oh, Hogan's gonna win. Oh, Sting's gonna win. No, Sting. He would call him Stink, and it would just get under my skin.
On your skin.
Yeah, he would just do everything he could to get under my skin, leading into Starrcade. And then when he beat him, I stood up. I was like, "Yeah, I told you." And then, of course, you know, you have the whole screwed up finish thing, and
That's the disappointing part about that. Listen here, I'm gonna respectful of your time and mine. A couple more questions. This one I never really asked anybody from Texas yet, so I'm really gonna put you on the spot because this is tough enough. This question, when people just ask it in general, but I'm gonna ask you if you had to pick like a Mount Rushmore or the top three. Exclude yourself, please. Exclude Justin Taylor, which I know you will. But who are the Mount Rushmore of wrestlers that come out of Texas?
wrestlers that come out. So
That's a tough one because I would think it would be hard for me to do out of Minnesota.
yeah, oh yeah, especially Minnesota. Terry Funk's got to be on there. I would say Fritz Von
You know what?
Erich.
If you're going to pick a Von Erich, you can have them all as one entry.
Okay. They could all be this weird looking little clump of family on the mountain. So Terry Funk, the Von Erichs, Steve Austin, and probably I want to say JBL. Probably those four. Those four. No, I'll take that back. I'm sorry, JBL. I'll take that back. The Guerreros. I would have, Terry Funk, the Von Erichs, Steve Austin, and the Guerreros.
Wow. I was for sure that the Undertaker was going to have a spot, or maybe Shawn Michaels. But you guys are so deep down there. That's why I said it's not a fair question to start out with.
Yeah, it's there's just so much talent to come out of this area, and you think about where guys really caught on, and if I think about like who defines Texas wrestling, Shawn Michaels, he traveled all over kind of from the get-go with Jose Lothario. The Undertaker, kind of the same thing. I don't see a lot of their kind of building the Texas territory stuff. And they were kind of getting started when the territories were dying anyway. So if I had to think about like who the territories were, you have Terry, Fritz, Stone Cold coming up in world class, and just being a representation of Texas anyway. And then the Guerreros with what they were able to do out in El Paso.
Fantastic. And if I said you didn't have to exclude Ryan Justice from that list, I got a feeling that everybody you just named would be kicked off and the mountain would be you standing on top by yourself.
Possibly. Yeah, there's a good possibility after everything's said and done.
All right. This pandemic has been crazy. I finally went in Wisconsin up here, starting in June, we were able to have fans at shows and we're able to run again, obviously being very safe and doing social distancing. I was a part of history on August 7th, Friday Night Lights with Warrior Wrestling. 500 people on a football field, socially distant. They did it well. They did it perfect. And a lot of the guys got to come back and wrestle in front of fans. The fans were excited, as I had predicted months ago. When we get fans back and we get wrestlers back, it's 120% from the fans and 120% from the wrestlers. Have you had any matches since this pandemic has started? Or when was the last time you were in the ring?
The last match I had was a four-way ladder match in La Mesa, Texas in March. And, West Texas became kind of a hot spot, especially Amarillo, and where I'm living now. And so I had bookings at the beginning of this year. I had shows booked all the way by the end of February. I had shows booked all the way through July. And when all this started, I lost every one of them except for the expo. And it was tough. It was definitely kind of trying. But I've been able to get in the ring and train and get to some places to kind of shake off rust. But yeah, because West Texas became kind of a hot spot, it was very hard to find a way to keep yourself in shape. And luckily, I was able to, push through that. But yeah, March 11th I want to say, no, not March 11th, that weekend, it was the weekend before, that I was able to wrestle the last time. And yeah, I've just been itching to get back in front of a crowd for the whole time since that night, since everything got shut down.
I'm excited for you, because just the energy that you're going to have from a crowd, the crowd is going to give it back to you 110%, and you guys are going to just be off your rocker there. A couple of the guys that are going to be on this show were up in Warrior Wrestling, and I know they'll let everybody know this is going to be awesome. So hopefully you don't have ring rust, but I think that's missing that much time really is that extra motivation. Because even if you don't put the NWA title on the line in that battle royal, just the opportunity to have a third match that weekend, it's got to be, almost enticing enough.
Oh yeah. Although it would be, at this point, it would be challenging physically, because you go from, 5 months of no matches, almost 6 months of no matches, to for sure having 2 in a weekend, much less 3 that are all, with such high stakes in them. Yeah, that it would be a great test. I would love to test myself that way, and I'm going to be doing my damnedest to try. So yeah, it's definitely going. I'm up to the task though. I'm not afraid of it. There's been a couple times where reality is kind of set in about, hey, you're a guy on this big a show. You need to get to work, and that just motivates me more in the gym and motivates me more in keeping up with my body. But yeah, throughout this pandemic, I'm sure, every wrestler, they're probably going to blow themselves up in their entrance. So
Yeah, possibility.
I mean,
final question for you, Ryan Justice, and it's the most important question that I ask on here. We started the lockdown sessions when we lost WrestleMania. I said, what can I do to help, given the platform that I have with Wrestling Travel? And of course, as you know, Wrestling Travel, we bring fans from all over the world to their favorite wrestling events. We show them a good time. They get meet and greets with wrestlers like yourself and wrestlers from the WWE all over. We pull out everything, no stops, to make it the best wrestling / vacation trip of a lifetime that we can, and we improve each and every time. Unfortunately, Wrestle Kingdom in Tokyo was the last one we were able to do. Kind of forgot where I was going with this. I was kind of plugging everything that we do. So what I did is I go, we got a YouTube channel just sitting here. It's got 286 people subscribing to it. We haven't used it. Let me use this as a platform to help people like yourselves. There are a lot of wrestlers, even to this day, that are hurting because losing those bookings is money gone off your table. I said, how can I help these guys? And I'm like, I'm going to do some long form interviews. Let fans during this time get to know some of these wrestlers. Let you guys sell your brand, and they need to find out where they can buy your merch. And hopefully what we're doing is selling tickets for when wrestling does come back. So my most important question is, as a fan, where can we follow you on social media? Do you have a store where we can buy merch? How can we support Ryan Justice? I want to be able to find you on social media, know if you're wrestling close to my hometown, because I watched this interview on Wrestling Travel and I thought you were awesome. You're somebody I want to see. So plug yourself away, my friend.
Definitely. This is my favorite part of the interview. So right now, Twitter @Justice8908. It's the same with my Instagram, Justice8908. Facebook, you can go to facebook.com/official Ryan Justice. Pro Wrestling Tees, you can get a better shirt than Justin Taylor's at prowrestlingtees.com/official Ryan Justice. I actually just released a alternate version of this shirt onto the store, so you can go grab that. And also I have a football show that drops every Wednesday night. It's called The Extra Point. It drops on Heck Yeah Radio Sports. Search HYR Sports on Facebook. And if you guys want to see me talk some football, I'll be there as well. But yeah, that's where you can find me.
Now, you talking NFL football?
Yeah, we're doing right now. We're doing division previews. We've had a couple technical difficulties with the first 2 episodes, but it's preseason, so we're working out all the kinks.
Well, I'm going to ask you to do me a favor right now. I'm going to put you on the spot because I'm giving you this platform to discuss you. I want a little preview of my Green Bay Packers, in your opinion. Can you give me a little snippet of your opinion of what's going to happen with my Packers?
We did the Green Bay Packers on last night's episode. So we
don't give away everything. Just give me a little.
I had them going 13-3, winning the NFC North, and contending for one of the top 2 seeds in the NFL. Some of the other co-hosts, I think they had them kind of 12. We all had them about 12-4, 13-3. We still think they're the best team in the North right now, although the Vikings are probably going to be close on their heels.
definitely need to be able to stop San Francisco's run game a little bit better than we did in the last 2 games that we had. So, all right. But please forget about the football for right now until the next episode that you guys do drops. Right now, if you're watching this, I want you to, if you're anywhere near Dallas on August 28th and August 29th, you need to get your butt down to the Independent Wrestling Expo, where Ryan Justice is going to battle his ass off that first night to hopefully have a shot at the NWA title against Nick Aldis, the current champion, and Jeff Cobb. He's also going to be fighting Justin Taylor. If you can't get down to Dallas, stay tuned to all of your favorite wrestling channels. We'll find out where this is live streaming, what platform. I know it's going to be announced soon. Ryan Justice, I can't thank you enough for being on, and hopefully, please, if you come away with that NWA title, we would like to be your first interview if we can.
Definitely.
Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited for this, and yeah, go and see it. Make sure you watch Ryan Justice versus Justin Taylor and tell all your friends about it.
Fantastic. Thank you, sir.